Hi everyone, maayong adlaw. Welcome back to Pilipinx in Wellness. In our last episode, we spoke with Dr. Christine Katipon about spiritual healing and wellness. We hope that you enjoyed it. Our opening and closing track for season 2 is Help Me by Ritchie. For this month's episode, in alignment with Undas or All Souls Day, Philippine X in Wellness presents Transitions, Death and Rebirth with Trisha Perez. I'm Cheryl Samson Ramirez. My preferred pronouns are she, her, sha. I'm ethnically Bisayan and Chinese, currently streaming from the traditional territories and still living Chumash, Tongva, and Kich people, colonially known as Los Angeles. Philippine X in Wellness's vision is to support the wellness of the Philippine X community through resource sharing, podcast streams, and partnerships with professionals and organizations in order to live healthier, happier, and more fulfilling lives. If you're not following us already, please feel free to follow us at Philippine X in Wellness with a P ending with an X in Wellness on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and on Twitter via the handle at Pilipinx, the letter N, the word well, followed by the letters N and S. We honor this safe space by asking everyone to speak and listen respectfully from your heart throughout our time together. This pre recorded session can be accessed through our Philippine X in Wellness YouTube channel and on Apple Podcasts. As always, we'll be sure to answer any questions that you have sent us via our Instagram stories within our episodes. Please keep in mind that anything that is discussed is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not meant to be medical advice. Always consult with your healthcare practitioner for your particular condition, especially before starting any exercise or new health program. Philippine X in Wellness was formed to provide a dialogue around topics that affect the wellness of our community. We're here to also highlight Philippine X individuals and organizations that are actively doing wellness work. Before we start our episode, we'd like to do a community shout out for one business that's actively doing wellness work, the Park's Finest, located in the Echo Park neighborhood of Los Angeles. The Park's Finest is a family business serving the people American cuts of barbecue with a Filipino flavor. You can eat there or contact them to cater your next business or family event. Stop by for lunch or dinner. Their address is located in their Instagram profile where you can follow them at the Park's Finest. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Trisha Perez. Trisha Perez is a healer, guide, coach, and doula for transitions such as death, loss, money, relationships, and other major life shifts. With sound energy and other tools, Trisha co creates a container of safety, trust, and compassion to help facilitate transitions to peace, power, prosperity, and pleasure. We would like to welcome to Philippine X in Wellness for the first time, Trisha Perez. Welcome, Trisha.
Hello, Cheryl. Thank you so much. And to the beloved community listening and tuning in, thank you for your presence and energy and interest.
Hi, and we're so excited to just have you here. I know I am personally.
I
So,
am as well.
yay. So, something that we always like to start off with in our episodes is something that every Filipino asks when they first meet you. Where is your family from in the Philippines through your parents' lineages? And where are you currently streaming from in case that's different from where you're residing?
Yes, my family on my maternal side, they are Tagalog. They are from Metro Manila. And on my paternal side, they're from Cagayan de Oro. And I'm streaming from Los Angeles, California, on the west side.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's dive in. The title of our episode is Transitions, Death, and Rebirth. Please explain to our community the various ways you offer support with transitions. So, Trisha, what does this look like?
Well, the way this transpires, transitions, death and rebirth, actual experience of death, physical death, or other types of death. The way I aim to serve the community is, the most important part is holding space. And holding space means it could just be listening to you for if you need emotional support or a loved one, if anyone requires or needs help with paperwork, just be a cheerleader, to be in your corner. To me, that's what holding space is about. It's about to co-create together this container where there's no judgment and it's full of unconditional love, and in turn that makes the person, both of us, when we're having interacting, there's that element of safety and sacredness. So that's what I hope to be for someone else.
And you mentioned paperwork. What kind of paperwork's entailed in this process?
So in death work, the end of life services, it could be like power of attorney or helping with any forms that a family member needs help with, like at the hospital, or anything related to your or your loved one's end of life process. If that helps answer the question.
Yes. And then I'm just curious, when does this start for an individual? So for most people that you are helping, when you're holding space for them, does at what point do most people normally reach out to you for support?
It varies. For a lot of people, it always happens when they find out a family member or a loved one, when they find out that they have some kind of terminal condition, where they're towards the end of life. So, people have approached me just to talk about it, just to talk about death, or just the process of death. That's what that means.
And are there other cultures, I'm curious, outside of the Philippines that utilize death doula? I mean, outside of also the US that you
Well,
come across?
we say death doula here, right? But let's look at it through the lens of death work, just death in general, the arena of death. You always have that one person people tend to go to quote unquote hold space to help process or understand or honor death. So think about the different, there's many ways people, it could be celebratory, it could be, solemn. It just depends on the practice. But in terms of death doula, there's always that one person in the village people go to help with the work.
Well, now I'm curious about your origin story, Trisha, and I'd like to know, how did you first get into this work? Was there any particular events or a series of events that prompted you into getting on this path?
Yes, I can. Oh my goodness, I can answer this so many ways, but let's talk about death itself. So my first experience with death was in the family when I was 6 years old here in Los Angeles area. It was my maternal grandfather who was diagnosed with cancer. And I recall being the 6-year-old self. I already had an intuitive feeling about it. Like there's something, I had a somatic understanding already. And what I mean by that is I remember, the adults talking amongst themselves and telling, telling the kids, us, that our grandfather was going to die. I just remember feeling there's sadness that came up, and I started to cry. So that's one specific event that I can recall. In terms of the most impactful death that I experienced, which also just hurled me into a complete soul crisis, where you feel like you are in this state of annihilation. And what I mean by that, like everything about you, your world just completely crumbles. And that specific death experience happened in 2017, when I had my first pregnancy and I had a stillbirth. You know, um, I was 6 months pregnant and delivering a, a dead child, a newborn. Like, so it's how, like, life and death completely collided at that point. I mean, collided, blended. I mean, talk about you don't know which way is up or down, like whatever. There's no beginning nor end. It was just all combined, all collided. Um, and I remember this experience, and it just changes you forever. And I went into that's the most recent dark night of the soul experience I had, which is another form of death, right? This emotional and spiritual death of yourself. And so with that's what really pushed me over the edge. And at that point, when you're questioning everything around you, especially yourself, like, what is real? What is the meaning of life? What does it all matter, right?
Right.
Um, you just you there's no other way, or what am I trying to say here? There's no going back. You can't unsee what you just see. You can't unfeel what you're feeling and all that. It's just a whole mixed bag. It changes you forever. I mean, at that moment, right? You either follow the calling towards your destination of being your full soul self, your most authentic self, or
Mhm.
you can stay in this unknowing, right? Or this um this illusion of who you think you are or what you think you're doing. So that's that's really the origins, is when I experienced that stillbirth. It
So,
Yes, apologies, but I just wanted to
mm,
last thing was that
no,
it
please.
just yeah, it just I felt I died and I was reborn.
Yeah, I mean, those are both really painful experiences and very
Mhm.
traumatic. I mean, the first one being at 6, even trying to understand the loss of, a caregiver that
Mhm.
many of us have grown up with, who is a part of our family first and foremost, and then is no longer there, and trying to understand where they went or why you're not seeing them anymore at a young age is a pivotal moment in itself. But I also wanted to thank you for your courage in being able to talk about the vulnerability of losing um, a a child and having a stillbirth, and how transformative that experience was for you too, to have to go through that.
Thank you for your words of love and compassion and kindness. I truly appreciate it. And telling stories is what it's all about. It's what keeps us all connected, is through those life experiences. And I'm always willing and open to share my stories, not to, it is really just to connect with others. That's what's keeps us grounded into this life, is that, all we have is today, this moment. So let's live our lives with as much joy and fun, even through the pain and suffering. So for me, this topic of transitions, death and rebirth, it boils down to, radiance, living, embodying our inner light, our radiance through the ruptures that we experience, that we absolutely get thrown into.
Yeah, I'm also curious, Trisha, and maybe I'm wondering if our listeners are also, or our viewers are also curious. I don't know if you recall your 6-year-old self feeling that hurt. Do you remember then what you did to move through that sadness and that grief? And also, similarly, fast forward to 2017, what were some of the tools that you used to move through your own um, grief grief of having a stillbirth?
So what I've learned over the many years is from that first experience up to the most recent. And of course, there's death experiences in between, right, that are just as traumatic, and there's grief there. I think, to answer your question, how I've been able to navigate through it is first of all acknowledging that it's there. Even though when you're 6, you have an awareness, right? And you have to be aware, like, okay, I'm sad, something. And then it depends where you are at that point in time. But what I found consistent within myself is acknowledging the grief. That's one. And two, really feeling it, allowing ourselves to feel without judgment. And then after that, being around other people is so helpful. Of course, we have those times when we crave to be in solitude, to process uh, all those emotions. At the same time, I can't emphasize enough the importance of being with others. We're communal beings. It really does take a village. We're not meant to, we're not meant to just do it, like, be alone. We need help. So asking for help is what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah.
And then lastly, um, it's it's not so much overcoming grief. It's a matter of how do you integrate it into who you are, right? As a part of your individuality, identity, or whatnot. Integration is key.
Yeah. So, how did you get from the point of experiencing these two major events and losses in your life, or maybe you don't see them as losses? So, I also want to correct my verbiage on that. How did you get from a point of experiencing these pivotal events to knowing that you also wanted to support people in this type of work?
It's because of my own journey that completely motivated me to want to be of service to others, because when I was going through it, especially for our Filipino community, there's such a gap there. And also as as a woman who has gone through a childbirth experience, there's a lot there's a lot of areas that do not get addressed, do not get talked about, um, where we don't, you know, we need more education now. We just, even to have a dialogue around it, like even the subject of stillbirth, the subject of death, the subject of grief, all that, it's not talked about enough, like for a lot of, like even the subject of fertility, right? Uh, it's all not talked about enough. And that's probably because of the way we were all brought up, the way we were all conditioned through what we've learned from others. And that's okay, because everyone is doing the best they can with what they know and what they were taught. So, as people in this wellness space, it is our calling to really spread the information, or just to, like, what we, circling back to what we first talked about in the beginning, is holding space, just learning to talk and listen about these matters of the heart. It's about, that's what makes us, that's what makes up a part of our humanity. And it's all beautiful, even the hardship, even the devastation. there there's still beauty within all that. Of course, when you're in the thick of it, it's a challenge and a struggle to find that. So that's when it's important to look to others, even those who are willing to dedicate themselves, in as professional work, to help you find that beauty, to find that light, to find, from transmuting that loss into a gain.
Yeah. I'm also curious, Trisha. I know for a lot of people, the relationship with that their loved one is severed once that person transitions or dies. I know for me personally, I feel like with people that have transitioned in my life, and I like to use that word transition, just because for me, I don't really see people as dying. Like I see them transitioning, and still feel like I hold a connection with them, even in the spirit world. So in the beginning, we were talking about Undas, like in the Philippines, and All Souls Day, and how culturally our people pretty much still have that relationship with the dying, or those that have passed or died or transitioned, by going to the cemetery and having their favorite foods and eating it with them. Do you also feel like you've incorporated those that have transitioned in your life, with your work, or even like in the support that you provide for others?
Okay, so would you mind
Sure.
repeat the
Yeah.
question?
So you,
Let me,
yeah, you
yeah.
mentioned that you lost your lolo, right? And you also had a stillbirth. And I'm curious for you in particular, do you feel that like you still maintain a connection with those that you've lost, or that have transitioned in the work that you do, or are they somehow still involved in your process of holding space and providing support?
Absolutely. I do believe wholeheartedly that I am still connected to those who have transitioned to other planes. In that, when those traumatic events occurred, I questioned that very much so. I couldn't see past the soil or the dirt of the ground. It really rocked me to my core of who I was and all my beliefs about, let's call it heaven or afterlife, or the next plane, the next dimension, whatever word applies to you and what you feel comfortable with. But yes, I really do believe that we are all still connected, and that's based on my belief that we are all energetic beings, and even though we take a human form right now, you and me and those listening and those who have transitioned, it's still all energy. And when you think about it, for example, we're made up of what, 60 to 70% of water. And how are the molecules connected or bonded? It's their energy, right? There's a whole science about it, the whole those quantum principles.
Quantum physics, yeah.
Yeah, all of it, all quantum principles.
Right.
That's, to me, all those things, science and faith-based belief systems, it all touches on that we are still connected, even though we cannot see with the physical eye, or maybe some of us do.
Right.
Yes.
I want to actually circle back. Thank you for that. I want to circle back to the definition in your bio of being a womb doula or a death doula, because I think it's common to hear a birth doula or a midwife. We actually interviewed a midwife, Joanna Galvez, in Long Beach, who assists, uh, I guess, couples or individuals that are ready to give birth. But I don't think too many people actually are familiar with a womb doula or a death doula and what end of life services actually look like. You mentioned in the beginning that it entails holding space, helping individuals with paperwork, allowing them to talk through the process of grief and mourning. Are there any other things that you wanted to add to help us better understand what these roles entail?
I think the easiest way or to kind of understand the role of a doula is they're like a guide, they're like a coach. They're there to help you. They are a helper, they are a steward, yeah, of service and assistance of whatever you or your family or loved one may need. Is that I hope that clears that up.
Yeah, no, for sure. And actually, I have one more follow up before we go to our break for the first half. I wanted to mention, Trisha, that I also know you as being a dancer, like with Kayumanan ng Lahi, and being versed and trained in a lot of our Filipino cultural dances. And I'm sure through the dances, you've picked up also traditions and customs through the stories that are taught through the dances. I know we were talking about death and dying in the Philippines and some of the things that are done. For example, with undas is bringing food to the cemetery, to the grave sites to eat with our loved ones and our families. I know also that sometimes they have caskets in the homes for families to be around. There's so many different traditions, right, in the Philippines because there's also so many different regions and customs that are broken down within the 1,000+ islands that make up our archipelago. Are there any specific traditional traditions that you've incorporated from the Philippines? I'm curious when you're working with clients here that they wanted to retain.
Yes, so with my performance background with Kayamanan ng Lahi Philippine Folk Arts here in Los Angeles, I have, I thank you for asking that. I didn't realize it, but that was also a point of entry for me to access within myself. Like, okay, this is something that's a part of me, not just because of my culture or heritage, but it's just, it's part of my roots, right? Of And with the different dances, I mean, mind you, it's brought on stage. It's a, it's in that format. I did notice over time, they tend to cast me in these like babaylan or shamanic roles. And with that, I have infused that into some of my modalities. So, for example, chants, the whole idea of chanting and using your voice, like to call in spirits or to call it in as part of ceremony or ritual, to honor, or rather to bring in the quality of peace for, those going through experience of death. And it's been eye-opening that way, and heart-opening to, you don't realize you're kind of tapping into an ancient wisdom, right? And then you don't realize, like, over time it starts to become part of your DNA, not just literally because it's part of our culture, but just, and yeah, you just kind of it's second nature. It becomes natural that you just do that. So, like, incorporating elements of earth, right? How we can use that as part of the ritual or the death work. Prayer, the concept of prayer. Now, prayer, and just in general, not to say it's specific to religion, but just the idea of prayer, right?
Right.
There's so many lovely elements that can be included in this work. It's endless.
And it's kind of cool, right, to see how your journey builds upon each, like, everything that you experience, even from your cultural dancing to the losses and the tragedies in your life, really contributes to, like, become building blocks for the work that you're doing now. I mean, I also have experience doing, like, Filipino cultural dancing, and it's really powerful that they also embed the music and the chanting and the prayer, and that's intertwined with the dance, because that's how also our people have moved through milestones in their lives, from birth to death and rebirth, right? And it's really, I think, even more powerful that you have that background and are able to integrate that into your practice, especially to serve our community. So I just wanted to say, Trisha, as we end the first half, it's really been an honor to have talk to you, to have the ability to talk to you, to our community, about transitional support. When we first started our podcast on Clubhouse, we talked about grief during the pandemic. However, looking at transitions through your eyes, I think we're learning so much more in this conversation. This has been a meaningful first half of our segment. Thank you all for joining us for season 2 of Pilipinx in Wellness. We're talking now with Trisha Perez, doula, healer, guide, and coach. Please stay tuned. Feel free to take a quick stretch, refill your water or tea. We'll be right back after this quick break.
You lived all your life in a daze, riding waves and awake to one day.
back to Pilipinx in Wellness. You were just listening to the first part of Dreaming Awake by Lowleaf off of her 2016 album Palm Psalms, A Light to Resolve All Darkness. You can help support Lowleaf by following her on Instagram at Lowleaf, all one word. And that's LOW. She is a multi-instrumentalist artist and producer based in Los Angeles. You can also find her music on Bandcamp, Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Music. Easier access is through her Linktree located in her Instagram bio. Shout out to all of our Pilipinx musicians out there laying down the tracks. Returning from our break, we've been talking with Trisha Perez about transitions, death, and rebirth. We talked about the doula services that you offer, Trisha. Tell us more about your soulful business coaching. What does that entail?
As it relates to transitions, the soulful business coaching is also holding space for the person to transmute their relationship with money, their mindset about money in terms of abundance, wealth, prosperity. And, there are transitions there because we can experience a loss. It could be through getting laid off, getting fired, going through a divorce. It could be a personal divorce or a professional divorce. We're using that loosely. So, there's the whole gamut of it. And those services, it's about helping the person really just alchemize their mindset, to remind everyone of their birthright to abundance and prosperity and wealth.
Do you ever find yourself mixing both? So, for example, sometimes during end of life or transitions or getting close to that, there's also the talk of distribution of property, right? And so I'm wondering if you ever find yourself merging both services.
Yes, it depends on the situation, and it's case by case. It can definitely be overlapped. The business coaching part of it, it really just is, coaching about the financial aspect of it, because as much as money is everywhere, and everyone has different perspectives on money in general. It's about, and I'll just put a little teaser out here, but what I introduce to a lot of people, even in the death work, is that money is energy. So in that sense, I can, blend in the different modalities.
I also think that it's interesting that you work with people with money or with finances, because I found that in our culture, there's also a very tricky relationship with money at times. Um, s- I know I can say, and to be transparent and vulnerable also on the podcast, I've seen toxic relationships with money within different members of my family, and where the relationships become transactional. So, and I actually found out from talking to different friends or, within our community that they also have similar transactional relationships when it comes through money. I'm curious to know, how do you use your soulful business coaching to also help folks in our community move through those toxic transactional relationships that are there?
Ooh, there's a lot to unpack with that question, and thank you for asking that, because I do work with clients within our community with that same experience that you shared about that toxicity that we, and it takes time it starts within ourselves. So with that part of my services as a coach or a guide, again, it's holding space. It's to journey together on where do our beliefs about money come from? How did it start? And how do we shift that for our highest good and for the highest good of all? When you think about it, a lot of people's relationships with money is quote unquote toxic, right?
Right.
Or negative, or it's unfavorable, or yeah. So it's about the relationship with that. It starts from within. That's one, and then together we'll discover, how to, like what I said, pivot that into something to expand that for yourself, so it can actually manifest into something really great. But more specifically, I did say money is energy, so it's about realigning the energy of money, and what, like, finding out together what is the root cause of that specific energy that you're feeling or experiencing.
Yeah, I mean, some of that is a really deep work to tackle, Trisha, and especially within our community where I feel like a lot of that transactional relationship and toxicity that is revolves around money and wealth distribution also came through colonialism and the setup of hacienda systems in the Philippines when and with many indigenous people actually globally when colonizers went into our countries, took the land from us and then distributed amongst themselves, placing this hierarchy. You could see it in Mexico, you could see it in its own version in India, and and similarly, it's really affected our culture, which has roots in both India and Mexico. With the connection of the colonizers, both England and Spain. So I think that's really a lot of deep generational work to really like walk people through, especially, I mean, there's that one connection to land and property that's really difficult because of that intergenerational trauma. And there's also the flip side of it, right? Of having family members that are addicted to gambling and can really lose all their wealth and property, which I also have in my family. So I think that's really big work that you're doing there. I also wanted to know, like, Trisha, how would someone differentiate between your soulful business coaching and seeing maybe like a financial advisor?
Again, with the money coaching, it is about your relationship with money, finances, the entire topic altogether. And as part of my work, I do sometimes recommend my clients to go seek out like a financial advisor or a financial planner, because that's a specific area of expertise and knowledge that that person may offer on how to help organize and invest your assets and whatnot. We touch upon it a little bit, but there's more a focus on mindset, relationship, and about money.
Right. And I wanted to correct myself earlier too when I was saying historically hacienda. I think I was referring more to the encomienda systems that were established by the Spanish. And I wanted to also circle back to what we were just talking about. So, because you also do soulful business coaching and your womb and death doula work, do you have partners that you bring into your practice to bring a more holistic experience to the people that you're working with and supporting?
When you mean partners, are you talking about people
Yeah,
who I
like
recommend?
like like for example, like, yeah, like a financial advisor, or let's just say you're finding that an individual might need support in a particular area, do you like refer them to a network within your work? I know you have the website Talaya Guides, right? Or Talaya Guides. Do you, so within that, is there a network that you work with that you've
Yes,
established?
yes, of course, because we are meant to exist in collaboration and co-creation and cooperation. So yes, I am always so happy to refer someone to someone else, for their level of expertise. You know, as we do as Filipinos, like we'll go to our immediate network, like what you said, like I might know somebody and this and that, but what we need to do as wellness workers, right, is that we gotta just ask, we gotta just have the conversation, like I want to be able to, I am like with pleasure, I want to be able to refer you or whoever. I'm all about that. Of course, like sometimes things are out of alignment, but that's okay. I'm always so happy to refer someone to someone else because, you know, if we're talking about abundance and prosperity and saying money is energy, I mean, you got to circulate that, recirculate that, recycle that, you got to reciprocate that. So the more we give and share and be stewards of change, to deprogram, to change the social conditions that we've within the paradigm of patriarchy, it's up to us now to change that, to completely shift that. And it's accessing our, the ancient wisdom that's running through our veins. And it relates to death. It relates to money. It relates to relationships. So relationships not just with each other, but with situations or with emotions, or like what we're talking about here with money or finances. Yeah. I am more than happy to refer. Yes. So yes.
And then similarly, Trisha, for members of our community that are looking to book sessions with you in particular, how would they do so?
Just access my website. I have a calendaring tool there. It's to request a date and time, and then I work with you directly to finally make those arrangements. I'm also available through email, phone call, even through social media. I will take the direct messages.
All right. And then we talked when we were planning for this episode about your offerings that they'll fully launch in 2023, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So be patient, everyone. 2023 is the year. And if you're booked with clients, if you end up being booked, um, and we found that we also have listeners in that are listen in from other regions, either globally or nationwide. Are there other practitioners that are doing similar work to maybe what you're doing that you'd like to shout out or recommend?
What's amazing is that the community is huge, right? And what I find so beautiful and I'm grateful for is that even if I refer you to someone else, you're going to get a different type of medicine. So it's like you're expanding your the facilitation of your self-healing. To answer your question, not necessarily, but they can do what they do in the way they do it. But yeah, there's always work to be done. So definitely, there's a lot of great people out there doing such important work for each other.
Right. Before we close, we always like to ask our guests, what are your own wellness practices? I know you hold space for a lot of individuals in your life through your work. So, what do you do to release And also, what do you do for self care that might be inspirational for our other individuals that are listening?
Oh, it's a plethora of different kinds of practices. There's dancing, singing, hanging out with friends. There's also solo time that could be just taking a salt bath, or a cold shower, maybe going to get and going working out, movement. That's when meditation, breath work, it's endless. Sometimes I'll use mobile apps that are free, like to help me. There's also seeking out other healers, like healers, guides, coaches. They need to go to someone too. So I also have my tribe of people I go to for coaching, for those wellness and self-care practices. And most importantly, also sleep, trying to get more sleep, quality sleep. I've also tried hypnotherapy. There's that. There's also trying to eat right. Nutrition is self-care and a wellness practice. Without judgment, of course. There's still a way to enjoy.
For sure, right? How can our listeners find you if they have additional questions, Trisha?
Yeah, so you can hit me up on Instagram at PACIAANNE. That's my personal one, or my at Talaya Guides. You can also go to my website, talayaguides.com, and email me through there. There's also my contact information.
Great. I think we were at the closing. Thank you, Trisha, for talking to our community about transitions, death, and rebirth. We're so honored to have featured you on our podcast right after Undas or All Souls Day. We're excited to witness how your journey continues to unfold and are here to support you as your Pilipinx in Wellness family.
Yes, thank you, Cheryl, and thank you, community of wonderful humans out there. I am truly grateful. I'm honored and I'm so humbled to have been invited to speak and be a part of this space and to potentially be of service. So thank you so much. My heart is so full.
And we're excited for 2023 and what that releases or how that unfolds for you. So we can't wait to witness that journey, Trisha.
Thank you.
And to our listeners, look out for our next episode, Pilipinx Identity in Children's Books. We will be featuring, right in time for the holidays, children's books authors Monica Tui and Paula Dio Campo. This episode will be aired on Wellness Wednesdays, December 14. Community questions will be posted early for this episode, so out for them in our Instagram stories. As we close, we'd like to say thank you to our guest speaker, again, Trisha Perez, our social media strategist, Kathleen Torrio, our designer, Ritchie, Lowly for consent to use your track that you heard during our break, our advisors, Alison De La Cruz, Rianda Los Reyes, and Safo Teologo, our community partners, This Filipino American Life, SoCal Filipinos, and Trek Table, and all of our community members for your shares and support. As always, we'll share more about our guest speakers' offerings in our Instagram stories and highlights for permanent access with any of their upcoming events. Be sure to follow us at Pilipinx in Wellness on Instagram, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, and on Twitter at Pilipinx, the letter N, well, followed by the letters N and S. Don't forget to continue to hit the subscribe button on our Pilipinx in Wellness YouTube channel. Thank you always for believing in us. Be well, everyone. Continue to take care of yourselves and each other. Durugid na nga salamat.